My guest today, Ryan Smolar, is an initiator of the Placemaking US Network, which brings together placemakers from US cities and around the world. He is also the co founder of Long Beach Fresh, which is a food policy council and local economic development agency, and advocates for serving the local food industry of Long Beach, California. Ryan's work helps build local economies, expand local networks, and enable community change. In this episode, he shared many valuable lessons from the placemaking activities and strategies that work well in US and can be resourceful for the new building networks, placemakers, and placekeepers. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I am Asban Sari, the founder of the organization Peacemakers Pakistani, and I am bringing you the stories of placemakers, artists, and professionals from around the globe about how they created an impact and made change happen. You are listening to the Making It Happen show. Thank you for joining in. Enjoy the episode. Hi Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you and how's it going? All in the Corona pandemic series, everything.
Hey, it's great. I'm Ryan Smolar. I'm the initiator of the Placemaking US Network, and I'm coming to you today from San Diego, California, over on the West Coast.
Great. Okay, so tell me, how did you find your passion for public spaces and placemaking movement?
So, I grew up in an American suburb of Los Angeles, and so these spaces were the antithesis of placemaking. They're very spread apart. You don't see a lot of people. There's no mixed use activity going on. So I was a very lonely kid. I had nowhere to go and nothing to do. And I only really saw what life was like on TV. And so when I grew up and I moved to the city for the first time, I got really involved right away. I started meeting people just on the corner who were working on local issues like putting on a monthly art event or trying to get some of the empty storefronts filled up with businesses that we could go to. And so people were really working together to make stuff happen. And so I quickly joined that group and then learned really that the government and that big institutions were really trying to also make some of those same goals happen. But at that time, what we perceived was really a big disconnect between what these big government and institutions were doing and the experience of people on the street. So I just fell right into that and started working on those issues and finding opportunities and finding people who wanted to do things and connecting the two. And I haven't stopped since.
Yeah, tell me about the placemaking US networks and your focus so far and the projects you have done and where are you heading towards now?
Yeah, so I found the placemaking movement through really what's called the downtown movement in the US. And so from my experience from working on the street with community members was, okay, we wanted to do all this stuff, but where were the resources? And I found that there were these downtown organizations or Main Street organizations who they were really trying to fund the activities that we were trying to get going. And so I really learned to speak that language and got accepted into that world. And through the downtown management world, I eventually saw and learned about Project for Public Spaces and the work of Fred Kent, and really got excited specifically about placemaking. That's what I realized I loved in downtown management, was the idea of creating place and community. And so I started attending the international events that Project for Public Spaces, groups like Placemaking Europe, Placemaking Asia were putting on, and realized that we weren't as organized on the grassroots level in the US. And so I worked with Placemaking X with Ethan Kent. And in the end of 2019, we formed Placemaking US so that we could get more connected as US-based placemakers with each other, but also with the other placemaking networks around the world like you.
All right, that's great. Yes, since I have been connected to Placemaking X Network since last year, 2 years almost, so I can understand that the energy that the whole network, the global community brings together, that does make sense. And yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to more work from you guys. Okay, so we can link to this question now, which is that what have your been the major lessons from working at downtown Santana business improvement district? What can we learn from you as placemakers? Like you mentioned, you appreciate you learn from the downtown projects. Yeah.
Right. I'm very lucky because I lead a downtown district in Southern California. And so that's really a place where I can be in touch with what are the contemporary issues. And when you do take some highfalutin placemaking concept and really employ it on the street, what actually happens? Does it go well or poorly or what? And so I get to do a lot in downtown Santa Ana with placemaking and then use that to inform conversations that I'm having nationally. And so some of the things I think that we're really good at in downtown Santa Ana, and it's not just me, these are other people I work with, but where we've really had a lot of competency is connecting the downtown to the schools, to the families of the community. My partner I work with, Madeline Spencer, that's been her top priority is to connect the education workforce pipeline as well as the consumption that happens in downtown. You need the people to come downtown and buy their goods and their services there. And so, in connecting really meaningfully to local families, providing their kids a place to perform, whether it's spoken word poetry or the band or the athletics, really showcasing local people has made them care about the downtown and made it a place that's really alive with their energy. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things. We're also really experienced in arts and in local food and dining. And so we have an art walk, we have an artist registry where any artist can put up a profile and get hired for local jobs. We also are a historic district. So there's a lot going on. And there's also a huge Latino population in Santa Ana. It's almost around 70% Latino because we're fairly close to the Mexican border. And so this gives us a lot of identity to celebrate with and to co-create with. And it's just an always evolving situation there. The most recent thing that's been established is a new travel bureau. So when visitors come and stay in the hotels in our area, they pay a little surcharge, and that has formed an organization to help create a better visitor experience. And so they're making sure that people know about the local events and that they can get there and things like that.
Awesome. This was amazing. It just, I had so many ideas in my mind throughout this, and it was helpful. Thank you so much for these lessons. And yeah, awesome. Okay. The idea road trip to recovery was very impressive. What initiated the idea, and share any two or three memorable stories, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, so this last summer we did the road trip for the recovery. And this was inspired because in the 1930s, there was a depression in the United States, and the federal government did some programs. One was called the Works Progress Association Administration, and that helped build a lot of really great places and buildings and bridges and awesome infrastructure that helped shape the success of the country for the next 100 years or so. And so we had an inkling that something like that was going to happen again, that there'd be a grand recovery effort, and it would be a huge opportunity to move forward the goals of placemaking. But the big difference is, so back in the 30s, when they did this, a lot of the money went to really big projects, specifically in New York City, because they were what's called shovel ready, meaning these projects, they had a big amount they needed of money to get done. They were going to have a big impact. And so the government kind of favored and funded those type of programs. So in the road trip for the recovery, we were going town to town talking to placemakers and telling them to get their little shovels ready so that their projects were getting scaled up now, or that if they had a project done, that was getting ready for approaching this funding. And we were actually right. The funding did come. The package that came simultaneously to the road trip for the recovery was called the American Revitalization Plan, or American Rescue Plan, sorry, ARP. And this was trillions of dollars distributed all over the country to people, to governments, to be able to build back better, to create the next United States. Well, what we found on our trip was that very few people had heard of this, which was very alarming to us, because as Americans, we think, well, the more we do together, the better the outcome is going to be. And the more ideas and the more opportunity and equality of, opportunities like funding, then the best ideas will rise in the marketplace, and that's where innovation will occur. That's my understanding. And it really seemed like this money was only known by a very narrow group of people, political people, big business people, and it wasn't, the mechanisms for engaging the public were fairly limited. So was very glad that we did this tour. We raised a lot of awareness with placemakers. Several of the placemakers did receive, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars towards placemaking initiatives for their cities, because of writing letters and advocating and knowing about this funding. And so that was incredible. Something that was, amazing for us, though, was we just were overwhelmed because we went to 60 or 70 cities, that in every city there's placemakers, and they're all different types of people. There's artists, there's bike advocates, there's urban planners, there's government people, there's neighborhood people. So we were just really amazed by all the different people who really have the same idea, that they want to create a nice place for them and their neighbors, and the different ways that they're doing it, and that they all kind of use this term, is just really cool.
Yeah, okay. So I was, while you were telling me everything, I was about to ask you that. So you educated people along the way. What was their response? And you said it, that you raised awareness and people got the funding and they get their projects done. Yeah, it's amazing. It does. The socializing matters. The awareness happened this way, right? Okay, so it's like when we talk about the trips and everything, the tourism aspect comes to mind. So, what are your major lessons on tourism in public spaces and the economy of a city? How extraordinary and important the mundane city life or the lifestyle is, according to you, for the normal people, for not local people?
Right. So I think that's what's really exciting about what's happening in tourism, is that it used to be that cities would build kind of almost like a playpen for tourists, and they put a lot of resources into creating a place that locals didn't really feel comfortable going, or it was too expensive, and that it drew all the visitor attention. So it kind of monopolized that experience. And I think that what's instead happening through things like Airbnb, where allow people to stay at their houses while they're away, or in a back house, or a duplex apartment, is people are kind of spreading out throughout the city when they come and visit. And they want to go where the local people go. And they want, through like Anthony Bourdain, if you've heard of that show, where, he really is a chef who went and he went to the local experiences, not the fancy stuff, but where are the real places, the authenticity. And so what that means is that when you create great places for locals, you're creating great places for your visitors, which helps ensure that financing, that infrastructure, that programming money goes to the right places and creates a more equitable and more authentic and more local version of what has been happening, which is like putting on a show for the outsiders to come. So we're very excited. We're going through a strategic planning process in Santa Ana with the new travel bureau, and what the experience there seems to reflect this trend, that people want authentic, sustainable, local experiences. And so we're there as place managers advocating, hey guys, let's invest in our art walk. Let's make sure the bathrooms are open downtown, the public restrooms. Let's make these improvements, because when the community feels comfortable coming here, that's when visitors are going to want to be there too.
Great lessons. Yeah, I agree because when we make things better for our local people, it enhances the culture and it enhances the cultural value, and it showcases that as well to the visitors. Right, very right. Okay, so how do you help in building local economies and how do you advocate for it in the world of capitalism and brand consciousness?
Mm. Oh, great question. Big question. So, my biggest thing on the economy is I believe the way you can impact the economy is by making more information available. So, the more people know, the better decisions they can make, the better actors they can be in the economy. I also believe, and so a way that plays out, let's say, for example, is I mentioned earlier, we have an artist registry. So we went to all these cultural institutions in town, museums, the colleges. They're hiring artists. They're paying money for bands, for graphic design, for for murals. Well, we asked them, how do you choose who to hire? And they go, well, we look on the internet, and there's this guy in San Diego, or there's this person in LA, and we're in California. We're in Southern California, one of the biggest creative economies in the world. So they feel like, oh well, that's a local artist. He's from 60 miles away. But when the artist is from Santa Ana, not only are they really engaged in the social order here, they have friends, they have family, they have people who care and know that they're the authentic people. And then also they receive that check and then they spend it locally. So we wanted the local people to get hired. So we built an artist registry where any artist in Santa Ana can put their profile up so that when the institutions are hiring, they can first search this registry and see if there's a local talent that they can hire, keep that money local, and also strengthen our personal creative brand and economy versus just adding to the general, Southern California or California economy, which is also good, but not as good. So that information piece, I think, is something that I really focus on. I also really believe in innovation and making resources available to many people to try different approaches. So crowdfunding, for example, we did at Placemaking US, we do a tool test, and one of them is this Placemake Earth Challenge, where we encourage placemakers to do something that helps the climate or helps with climate resiliency or designing with nature. And so we issued that challenge at Placemaking US, and my business improvement district in Santa Ana, we took the challenge by putting up $5,000 for local people to come up with their own ideas and solutions to that problem. So we ended up giving, I think, $5,000 or $6,000 about grants. And the ideas that the community came up with were really amazing. They were very diverse. There was stuff with restaurants, there was stuff with gardens, with local ecology, there was art projects. And so not only did those people take that $1,000 and leverage it with their own talent, time, connections, and probably spent more money than even we were able to give them because they're passionate about the project. They came up with very different approaches. They made connections that they wouldn't have made because these projects happened in public and people said, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Could we hire you to do it even bigger scale? So it led to many innovations and changes in the economy. It planted multiple seeds, and it wasn't so direct and command and control, which that's a big complaint I have, is that a lot of times I find cities and economic development groups, like, they pick very limited things they pick the winners and losers. And so instead of doing that, this is really making the opportunity available to people engaged in the community, and several people took it, ran with it, and it feels more fair and bottom up.
Yes, and this was very informative, and it sparked many ideas and the strategic movement. It creates a strategy that we can bring people together and ask them to share their ideas and even implement it themselves. Very
Right.
informative. Yeah. Okay, so tell me about Unity Action. I'm quite curious about it.
Yeah, so YIMBY is kind of a really cool phenomenon. There's a saying in the US about NIMBYs. And so the YIMBY is a reaction to NIMBYs. But NIMBYs are not necessarily an organized, I think, group, but it's just a word that's come to describe a behavior, which is a NIMBY means not in my backyard. And what that refers to is people who come before city councils or planning commissions and they say, oh, I support affordable housing or housing for the homeless, or, we got to build our waste system somehow. Just don't put it anywhere near me. I don't want to deal with any of that. And that's a huge problem that in the US, because a lot of people, what they has come to happen is we've created this giant housing crisis where we've built all these single family home or low density districts that are not sustainable climate wise, financially, they don't work for the cities, yet they're a preferential way for people who have access to that type of lifestyle to live. And so people have bought these homes and now we're needing to densify, we're needing to add duplexes or accessory dwelling units, so that known as mother-in-law units, in the backyards, or building 3 or 4 story apartment complexes, or even, God forbid, affordable, quote unquote, affordable housing, workforce housing, artist housing, senior housing, all of this construction, and people don't want it. They don't want it anywhere near them. And they've really, whether they're tricking themselves or not, they even say, I support all these things, just I don't like this project. But when they fight the projects, these projects end up not getting built. The housing doesn't get built. We have a huge problem. And it's most intensified in coastal areas, in affluent areas, in heavy job growth areas like San Francisco. And that's where actually YIMBY came from. So YIMBY came kind of accidentally, as I've heard from the story, is that kind of a housewife who was just completely fed up with this NIMBY phenomenon of people with houses denying future people without houses the opportunity to have a place to live. And she went to her local planning commission and gave this impassioned speech and started really tracking the issue and then creating a force to react against the NIMBY apathy, let's call it. And so that there's somebody saying yes to projects because we need the housing, fighting cities that are refusing to do their part to build affordable housing with legal action. And they've, through this grassroots, woman-led effort, they've already got 15,000 members, is my understanding. They have chapters all across the country. This has just happened like the last 5 years. I was just at one of their events in Orange County where they have a fairly newer chapter, also started by a woman who just happened to hear the original founders speak at a Urban Land Institute conference that was in Southern California. And so these people have organized to really fight where housing is dying on the vine in communities, which is in these planning commission meetings and these neighborhood meetings, and in city councils who are refusing to allow housing to be built. And they've won multiple court cases. They've gotten, I think, thousands of housing units built. And it doesn't seem like they're going to slow down. So it's amazing positive message and force towards building housing.
All right. So it was a big movement, right? It wasn't about small projects. Is that true?
It's organized in the sense that there's chapters. So each chapter is embedded in a community looking at the opportunities for housing. I think I've heard a lot about them working on multifamily housing complexes. So getting those built, affordable housing units getting built, because that affordable housing is a pretty complicated, topic, but what's happens is a lot of times areas get money, cities or governments get money, and then they don't move it to actually build the housing. They just let it sit there. So somebody has to push all this forward because nobody's wanting to really take the leadership on it and make sure people have places to live. And instead, what happens a lot is people complain here about the homelessness. So I don't know if you've seen much graphics, but like cities around me in Los Angeles, for example, they have 10,000 plus homeless people living on the street, and they have tent cities in intersections under bridges. It's really totally insane. So what people do is they complain about that. I don't want to see those people, but they don't say, okay, well, let's make sure we're building the affordable housing we need, and do we have wraparound services for people with mental illness? And so a lot of us are, I think, trying to articulate and move those systems forward, because they underlie whether a place is good or not. It includes if people are housed or not, and if they're in danger and things like that. So it's this fundamental stuff that we're excited about. The Yimbys have told me, they look at placemaking a little more like they're baking a cake and we're putting on the frosting kind of thing. But it's all integrated and connected.
Yes, it is integrated, right? Okay, so tell me about Long Beach Fresh. I like the idea and want to hear more from you.
Sure. So Long Beach Fresh is another project that I'm involved in, where we're what's called a food policy council for our local city. And so the food policy councils, I think, are kind of a United States phenomenon in the sense that they're organized, and it's groups of people who are concerned with how the food system works, who has access to it, and how sustainable it is. So, for example, some of the issues in California, which one of the biggest food producers in the country and maybe in the world, is that workers aren't paid very well, whether they're in the fields or you're at the restaurant. They're not making a living wage, and so we want to increase that ability so that people who are preparing our food and putting it on our plate, that they're cared for. In some cases, the animals aren't treated that well, or the food is coming from far away. And so we look at all of those types of issues, from the sourcing all the way to the plate. Like, for example, also in schools, like there's some schools where 70% of the kids are getting their food from the school, and the school's food is not very nutritional. It's not very healthy. It's not creating good food habits. So all types of issues like that. But where I'm most passionate about is really in the urban agriculture, what's called urban agriculture here. So this is when we take lots, like an empty lot or underused property, and we get the community engaged in growing food together. And so we do that quite a bit, and it's really incredible what happens to people when they get involved in growing food. Especially, we don't have seasons here in California. Southern California. It's a Mediterranean climate, so you kind of don't understand how life works. That things grow and they die, and that this fruit is available this time of year and this isn't, because you go to the supermarket and there's always the same stuff, whether it's coming from Chile or from, right here. You don't really pay attention. And so you lose this connection with nature, with what grows here, with the types of food that people who live here cook. And at the same time, people, traditionally, immigrants use food as a way to raise in the economy. And so we have people who want to make salsas or make tamales or make healthy meals for their neighbors, and it's not allowed. So there's all these inefficiencies and disallowances in the food system. And so we work on those type of issues, and we've helped establish neighborhood farm stands where you can get free produce. We have established a crop swap where people come and, I have a lemon tree, I have an orange tree, I have, a lot of kale that I grow, and people share that and information. So it's just really been something so incredible. And I love working with food and place. I think it's a really rich area that I hope we can explore more in.
Yes, definitely. And food brings people together. That's a rule. That's a fact. Okay, so tell me about the place where you live, and how do you narrate your place attachment? I'm very interested in it.
So I'm really a Southern California baby. I've been here my whole life. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and that's that suburb that I was talking about earlier. And I don't feel too attached to that place actually. It's really Long Beach, which was the first urban area I moved to. Lived in the downtown in the artist district that I really consider my home because it's a place where I just feel like I was seen as a person. I got to do things that were in the newspaper, and people, know who I am and know what I'm trying to do with my life on a city level. So it's really an incredible feeling of ownership, it owning me and me owning it, and feeling responsible to it. And then Santa Ana is just 20 minutes down the road, and has been connected to Long Beach for 200 years, or 130, 40 years. So there's a deep connection between those two places, and I just bounce between the two. Santa Ana feels more like an adopted home. I feel like when I came to Santa Ana, I was in a position of authority, and so I don't feel like quite as embedded from the ground up as I did in Long Beach. I think people in Santa Ana are there's a little bit of concern between people in and out of power and people getting along, and so that's been really challenging and forced me to grow, to say, oh, this person isn't just going to accept me. They're not interested too much in talking to me. I really have to build a relationship here, and put a lot into this. So they've made me work for it in Santa Ana quite a bit. And that's something I've noticed too, that's really intensified in the US. Even I've been in Santa Ana 7 years, but just in the last few years, it seems like people really are very territorial to a point where I don't know how positive it is. I've moved to communities where they act like if you haven't lived there for 5 generations, they don't really want to talk to you. And I think that there's something that Peter Blocker and John McKnight, who are with the asset-based community development, they wrote a book called The Abundant Community. And they talk about community competence. And at this high level of community competence is when you can welcome outsiders. So I think that's something that I really look to as like when a community, yes, has a strong sense of identity, but that they're not pushing other people out, but that they have a way of welcoming and hosting. I think that's really key. And that's something that, I've taken on as trying to help Santa Ana develop, because I feel like for various reasons, that spirit isn't there like it is in Long Beach and maybe other places.
All right. Yes, it's about sense of belonging and connection that allows you to have the ownership, and yeah, that demands that um, liberty to people coming outside or living inside, both ways. Okay. So lastly, what are your expertise as placemaker, and what do you enjoy most? Like you mentioned, food and place. Anything else?
I love traveling, and I love learning. So when we visited the 60 different cities around the US, it was so great because you pop in and the placemakers immediately, they just start talking to you like, and so they would show us all these different situations formed because of a river, or because of history, or because of two people not getting along, or just the dramatic happenstance of that story coming together, and then working with them to brainstorm possibilities and actions that we could take to help move that story forward. That's the most exciting part for me. I'm not so much the type that likes to really be embedded forever in a project and manage it forever, although there are a number of projects that I am doing that on and enjoying. I really love those catalytic change moments where we can really bring different ideas and things together and really change things. It's so exciting.
Definitely, you enjoy learning. That means the
Yeah.
moment of learning. Yeah, great. Okay, so last here's the quick question that I ask everyone. So, okay, Ryan. So, tell me what drives you, what keeps you focused on public spaces.
Mm. it's funny because I'm very much like always questioning myself and what I'm doing. And what's great is I always come back to that this is what needs to be done. It is just so disappointing to me when you walk outside the way that the world is. I see that there is so much potential to create better systems that connect us, bring us together, make us happy, and fulfill us, and give us an opportunity to do so much more. And I get renewed by the passion of the people who are taking specific actions to make those things happen, because I've done a lot of specific projects and I enjoy them, but really like helping people change their project, make that one tweak like or connection that can help them get to the next level on something is really like the most valuable thing I can do. So it's something I seek out and am hoping to do more and more of.
Awesome. Okay, and share your most memorable moment you are proud of from your work journey.
Well, I was just looking at an email that went out from an organization that was celebrating some of its accomplishments this last year. And so some of them I had worked with them on. And so I was really happy to see that. And some of these projects were, we helped a Peruvian restaurant make an urban garden behind their restaurant. So they're sourcing some of the food right from their own backyard. And in that same neighborhood, we helped a Filipino market that it was like a corner store, but they had 40 culturally authentic fruits and vegetables they were selling, but their fridges were all broken. And we got them a grant for brand new fridges for that to be there. And then we threw a festival in that neighborhood called Everybody Eats. And we opened up all the gardens, all the farms, all the places people could get fresh food, and brought people together with singing and dancing. And it was just so many layers of activity. I love that we were able to do this work in that neighborhood and stay engaged over a long period of time with multiple different types of projects around food, and then really bring it all together thematically with that festival. So it's just kind of patting myself on the head a few minutes before we start talking about all that work last year. And so that's what I'll highlight.
Great. It deserves that. The pat in the back and on the head. Okay. Share the hardest moment, the struggling moment of your work life.
So
and the lessons you learned.
What's been really, really frustrating lately is that there's these projects which I know are fantastic. They're very important placemaking structures for the community that I'm engaged in. And the people who I feel like should be supporting these projects are nowhere to be seen. They are not helping this critical project, which we know is really, really, really important. And they're not really communicating about it either. And so that has been infinitely frustrating to me. And what I've done lately is, instead of trying to appeal to them who are maybe not interested, even though it seems like because of their titles or because of their roles, they should be key partners, is that I've really taken the project and gone elsewhere to other people to tell the story and see where the support is. Because I believe in this project. I know it's important, and that's what I can do, is I can document that and convey that to as many people as possible. I don't know where the support will come from, but that's what I can do. And so that has been a powerful lesson for me, because I think as a placemaker, sometimes you hit your head against the wall just, repeatedly. And that's what I was doing with this other group. And instead of, okay, time to move either the wall or myself, and go in another direction on this. So that's something I'm learning. We're actually going to be starting a monthly gathering, Placemaking US, to kind of help placemakers through these type of issues, because I think we all are really change agents. And so we're always, kind of on the wall between maybe the community and the power structure, or two groups that aren't getting along or whatever. And it can really be stressful and tiring, and you need to refresh and at least talk to somebody who understands. So We'll call it the Placemaking US Cafecito, and it's going to be on the fourth Mondays of the month, and you can register on our website. But that's going to be an opportunity where people can kind of refill their gas tank a little bit on these issues.
Yeah, I just saw this today on Placemaking US Network. It's awesome. Okay, share your favorite placemaking mantra or anything that you follow that keeps you focused.
So I think I quote a lot of Jane Jacobs, and some Fred Kent has some good ones as well. I guess like I would say that the one that gets my heart the most is that the city that's for everybody was created by everybody. I just think that's the truest thing, and the truest thing to my heart, is that, hey, who made you, who put you in charge? I want this. Does anybody else want this? Oh, you do? Hey, let's do it. We're not going to bug anybody. So that's the world I want to live in. And I think she nailed it with that quote.
Yes, uh, the agency belongs to everyone.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So, do you have any opinion about placemaking in Pakistan or Pakistan in general?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what you're doing. I was thinking when you asked, what do I know about Pakistan, and unfortunately, most of what I know is through the lens of national news about our governments working together or not working together, and wars in the region, and really not the things that you want to know about a place. And so I really need to be educated, and I love to see more cultural exchange. And I'm very glad that you're leading up these efforts and connecting so much internationally so that we can have more exposure. And I don't want you to think it's just Pakistan either. Like, I was able to go to Japan through the placemaking, and really learned. I knew very little about Japan as well. I don't think many of us know that much about each other, and we need to learn a lot more about each other. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to be networked to you through this.
Uh, Same, likewise. I'm also very excited to share more about Pakistan and to to showcase the actual Pakistan and its culture. Okay, any message that you have for the global leaders out there, as many young placemakers are joining in and people are accepting it?
Yeah, I think people should really reach out and connect and share their work. And I think that it's a very encouraging and open network. And we really talk to people all the time and find things that they can meaningfully connect into and get going on. This is a very action oriented group, and we're all over the world. And so if you want to do something, I recommend you start talking about it, start doing it, and connect with us so that we can support each other's efforts and hoop things in, because I'm constantly amazed at how small the world becomes through this network.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this awesome informative session. I have learned a lot, and you have just I'm just having so many ideas in my mind. You inspired me so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. It was lovely talking to you. I hope you
Thanks
had a
for having
great
me.
time. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.